Hello out there, and today we're going to be discussing the 10 things that you need to know about this brand new Civivi Elementum. Beginning with number 1, what's in a name? And let me just say thank you to everyone who commented on the first video I made about this knife from Blade Show 2019. You know, when I picked this knife up there, the people at Civivi didn't have a name for it yet. And they gave the opportunity to anyone who bought it to come up with some suggestions in naming the knife. And so I came to all of you guys, and you guys gave some really great comments. And the things that I went with that you commented were the Noble and the Prestige. I brought those to Civivi. Obviously, as you can tell from the title of this video, Civivi went a different route. But the good news is that I actually really like the name Elementum. I think it works, and while it would be very cool in the future to have a knife named by this channel, it was just a fun experience, and it was good to be part of that process, even though they went with, ultimately, a different, and probably better, let's be honest, name. But let's get into number 2, scale options. And one thing that I've seen in pictures posted by Civivi is that there are going to be a number of different scales for this knife. There is going to be like a wood kind of scale, a black G10. I got the gray G10, and I'll be honest, when I saw this in the glass case at Blade Show, it was next to the wooden one, but there was something about the gray G10 that just jumped at me, guys. And I've seen a lot of gray knives in my day, almost too many, but for some reason, it's not really a blue gray, but it's just a really nice shade of gray that it just popped, and so I wanted to get it. And while that might have been the more like plain decision, it's definitely the one that worked for me and my favorite of the ones that I saw there. So I'm sure in time that there will be a Damascus steel version one, because that's what they seem to be doing with all the Civivis. But the 3 that I know of definitely are going to be that gray, the black, and that wooden scale. And they're all pretty darn good looking. Getting into number 3, just enough handle. So one thing when I look at knives like this, guys, they're sort of like gents pieces in that they have a certain classiness to them, but they're also just like an everyman's kind of EDC with a traditional kind of shape, nothing too fancy, nothing too big or heavy, you know, sort of just like right down the middle with all those characteristics. But so many of those knives, they don't get the overall length right. And what I'm getting at is sort of like the Mass Drop Gent is a perfect example of it. Even the Benchmade Mini Griptilian, where I'm like, it's almost, and let's do a size comparison real quick. You know, we're almost talking about like the same exact blade length, but when you're handling the mini grip, at least with my hands, which are a little bit on the smaller side, even those, you know, you don't get that fourth finger on there quite perfectly. You know, if you look at the Chris Reeve and Cosi, the small and Cosi, I mean, it's just not a 4-finger knife, you know, and so there's just like gap of large to small where just in the middle, that sweet spot, it just doesn't seem to be hit all the time. And if you go with a knife like the Para 3, you just have all this extra handle length. And so someone who's looking for something that's just like perfectly going to fit their hand and you're going to be able to get all 4 fingers but not have too much extra space, this knife does it. This knife does it really well in ways that not many knives do. And it's a very simple thing, but it's something that when I got it in hand, I really appreciated that because it sort of satisfies both kind of sizes and both needs that you might have. Getting into number 4, the little details all add up. And this knife is all about the little details. Even at a pretty fair price and not being like a high-end knife, there are a lot of aspects of it that just are executed nicely that just push things over the top. You know, whenever there's one little detail about a knife that's great, it resonates, but when there's like more, it just creates a great overall total package. And you can see I'm already like focused on the jimping. The start of the jimping, it is it's just really good. I mean, it's sort of squared off at the top and round at the bottom, so it grips the thumb nicely. It's good with the forefinger. If you are choking up really far, like it gets the back, you know, like where your knuckle is, so you can actually get grip there. It's a little bit aggressive and maybe slightly sharp, but it's done very, very well. You know, other aspects of the details that I'm really happy with, we have T8 body screws. So that's definitely a big plus. Really high quality body screws as well. We have some weight reduction on the inside, and even though the liners aren't nested, you can see that there's some machining and milling on the inside just to cut the weight and keep it below 3 ounces, which is definitely a good thing. And then last but not least, the pivot. The way the pivot hole is machined makes it just easy to disassemble, and that's actually going to lead us into the next number 5. Simple construction. This knife is really easy to disassemble and put back together because of those T8 screws. Because of the way they did the pivot, you're not going to have to worry about, you know, these two heads rotating together. Just easy, come apart, not a lot of pieces, put it back together, not a problem at all. So for someone who is sort of new to knives and not an expert at taking things apart, this might be a great knife for you. And again, especially when we get to the price point and the value and the materials of what you're getting, I mean, just this is a great, I'm only going to have one knife kind of knife, you know, because it can do everything and the maintenance on it will be pretty darn easy. Number 6 is the last of the little details that I want to talk about, and it is billboarding. There's none. And I'm not a big billboarding guy, but sometimes something jumps out at me that I just want to comment on. And I had this knife for almost a week before I realized, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get it on camera. I might have to show a photo, but maybe you can see it right there. That's the only billboarding on the entire knife. D2. So you can see that it's D2 tool steel right here in like a white laser. So can't even see it, you know, it's gone. There it is. You know, it's just one of those things where it's a little tiny detail where they wanted to show that, they wanted to stamp that, but they didn't want to, you know, muck up the lines of the knife. And so, yeah, it's just again, another step that you wouldn't normally see on a budget knife, but you're seeing on this one, you know, which is still at a really good price. You do have the Civivi logo in the pivot, which I think is pretty clever, and that works as well. All right, number 7. I guess we need to talk about action, right? Like, can't have a video about this without talking about it. It is a manual flipper on bearings. The action is very, very good. It's not amazingly drop shut. You can see it's not going to just like fall shut, but you know, with a little bit of effort, it swings down pretty well. It's something that I always like to talk about though, because you know, even though this isn't exemplary or bad, you know, it's something that people are always curious about, and it's something that I'm always interested to know anytime I pick up a knife. Now, that said, while I'm telling you that it's not like the best, most amazing action, just the fact that we live in a world at this day and age where action like this isn't exemplary anymore just tells us how how good the industry has become, because the action is nice and snappy. There's zero issues with it whatsoever, don't get me wrong. You know, and the detent is pretty solid. It won't shake out. There you have it. Yeah, so it's very, very good. But I think the industry as a whole, especially for knives at this price, is just getting better and better. All right, and number 8, getting into performing beyond the needed and intended function of the knife. So this thing, guys, was an absolute beast. And I'm going to cut to a video in just a minute after I was breaking down some pretty hardcore cardboard. But as I'll say in that little clip, I mean, I went to town with this knife in a way that I really haven't had to with EDCs just day in and day out. You know, I put it through some pretty rigorous cutting of some cardboard that I don't really encounter all that often in my daily life. And I mean, I beat it up, and it worked, and it held up very, very well. And it resharpened super easy too. And the lockup on this knife is perfect up and down. And I mean, I put a lot of torque and just a lot of pressure in ways that, like I said, it's just not customary. So I'll cut to that video just to show you how this knife can really perform if you need it to. And then we'll be right back. All right, guys, so here we are in my carport, breaking down some boxes with this Civivi. And it's actually just one big, massive box The bulk of it's right here. The rest of it you can see. I mean, what this is from a bunch of patio furniture that was sent to my wife, and it's sent in this like massive, really thick cardboard box. And I mean, you can see some of the stuff we're working with is like this 4-ply or whatever you want to call it, this heavy duty cardboard. And the Civivi, I'm like dripping sweat all over the box, but the Civivi here is holding up its end of the bargain. It is performing. It is struggling, but it's also not designed for, you know, this kind of workload. And the amount of torque and just force that I'm putting on this knife just in order to get through, it's sharp, but you know, it still takes a lot of effort. And I mean, the knife is still solid. Developing a little bit of side to side that can just be tightened up, no worries there. But the knife is certainly outperforming what I will need it to do on a day in and day out basis. So really happy with that aspect of it. All right, guys. So yeah, you can see that I had a little bit of a hot and sweaty evening in my carport, just going at it with this Civivi, and yeah, it was pretty impressive just the way that it performed, and it is a lot more than just a simple small task EDC if you need it to be, that's for sure. Getting into number 9 now, clipped opportunity. So the only negative that I could possibly have, that I can think of really, is the clip. The clip is actually a very good clip. The retention is great. I have no issues with the way that it carries, but even though it doesn't matter to me because I carry my knives right-handed, I would think that on a knife like this that you'd want to make it reversible. And I don't know, maybe I have a prototype and maybe they are going to make it reversible. I'll update down below if that is the case. But you would think that just with this kind of scale, this G10, it'd be super easy just to machine that and make it swappable. I don't know. Personally, not an issue with it, but it's something that it just sort of made me raise an eyebrow, like, just surprised that they didn't go that route. Anyway, I'm getting into number 10. Value and the gent comparison. So I sort of saved this to the end. A lot of people, when I first posted about this knife, they compared this to the Mass Drop Gent, which is also manufactured by We, so basically probably made in the same factory as this one, the Elementum. So the Gent versus the Elementum, even if it is similar in design, which, I mean, blade shape, it certainly is, and just overall lines, somewhat similar, even though the Gent is a little more boxy near the back. What the Elementum has that the Gent doesn't is really what I was saying before. Just that extra handle length and just that fit is just a little bit better. You know, when I first had the Mass Drop Gent, I did a comparison video with it versus the Browse Blade Spectre. And because I figured those two designs were very similar, and I said I would go with the Spectre over the Gent. I would not in any way go with the Spectre over the Civivi if you're looking at it at a straight value like discussion. Both of these have the same steel. They're similar sized. Maybe the G10 is a better quality. Maybe the steel frame lock is a little classier on the Spectre, sure. But the price point of this knife, get this guys, the price point of the Civivi, the MSRP is $59. So this is going to sell in like maybe the $50 range, maybe a few dollars more. And that is just, it's mind-boggling to me that it is going to be that inexpensive. You know, D2, I see a lot of value in D2. I don't have a problem paying $150 for D2 because I know how good it can be. And just again, another thing, in this day and age, we can get high quality steel and really good action and great materials in a build like this for such a good price. And comparing it to the Gent, you know, the Gent, maybe it had S35 yen and people like that more, sure. But I just think that this knife, while it might be similar, it definitely has its own feel, and it definitely has a competitive price to the extent where, like, who cares? You know, if you like the Gent more, like, more power to you, and if you prefer that. But, I mean, I think at this price point, and with the materials that we have, I don't see how this knife is not a massive home run for Civivi. It's just that good. And it's just such a surprise. And people more and more starting to come on board with that long-term prognosis of the budget knife realm, where knives like this continually push the people at like Kershaw and CRKT. And while I'm not sure how that's going to go long term, immediately it does make it really hard to sometimes pay $35 or $40 for a CRKT or Kershaw that might not be that well built when you have this beautifully executed knife with great materials for like $15 to $20 more, if that. So yeah, that's my take on it, guys. Those are the 10 things that you need to know. Excellent knife here. Definitely glad I picked it up at Blade Show. Any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, though, let me know down below. Really appreciate you watching. Take care and have a good one.